Having a lot of tension and tightness in the pelvic floor can cause all kinds of sexual issues for men, things such as premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, pelvic floor pain during sex. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of information about getting to the root of many of these issues in the mainstream world. So if you really want to get to the root of this issue of pelvic floor tension, it's important to look at all of the different factors that can be contributing to it, because then you know how to take action. In this video, I'm going to break down what could be causing your pelvic floor tension and what you can do about it. I'm Jonathan White. I'm here to help you master your sexual energy so you can manifest your ideal life. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Take my free ejaculation control course through the link in the video description below. There's often a strong relationship between sexual dysfunction such as erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, and pelvic floor issues, usually strong tension patterns in the pelvic floor. And what happens is men are essentially holding a Kegel throughout the day. They're holding this contraction in the pelvic floor, which is further engaging the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response in the nervous system pathway from this area, meaning that basically when they go to have sex or sexual stimulation, it doesn't take much to push them right over the edge into ejaculation, because ejaculation itself is basically a stress response in the nervous system. And this hypertension can also cause erectile dysfunction, because when the muscles and tissues in the pelvic area are locked in these tension patterns, they're essentially flexing all day, which is pulling blood into that area and also constricting blood flow in and out of the genitals. And it's important to understand that this tension isn't always originating in the pelvic floor, in the perineum area itself. It's often relating to the surrounding muscle groups as well. So this can be muscular tension patterns. It can also be disruptions in the fascia tissue. You can do a bit more research about fascia, but basically it's this connective tissue that forms a sort of web around the entire body. All the muscles, organs, everything is bound together by this fascia tissue. What often happens is, because this fascia works as an interconnected web, when there's an area of tension or blockage in one area, everything gets pulled towards that area. Take my shirt, for example. Let's say my shirt is fascia tissue. If there's a disruption here, basically everything is getting pulled into this area. So you see how there's this knot here, so to speak, but it's actually pulling everything. So the root problem could actually be over here, but it's creating tightness all the way over here because of the interconnectedness of this tissue. It's important to see the pelvic floor not just as a standalone muscle tissue area, but that it works in connection with the surrounding groups. So pelvic floor tension often originates in, for example, the thigh muscles or the abdominal muscles, because these are interconnected. And a lot of people often point fingers to very specific muscles, like, oh, it's always caused by psoas tension, which the psoas is a common area of tension for people. But for me personally, I had a hip adductor tension issue that was also causing issue in my psoas, also causing tension in my pelvic floor. So it's not always obvious what the issue is. So working with a good body worker, massage therapist can help you get more to the root of where the tension is located. And often these tension patterns in any area of the body, one cause of them can be basically if you have two supporting or opposing muscle groups. For example, take the tricep and the biceps in the arm. One creates a contraction, pulling the arm towards you. One creates an extension, moving the arm away from you. And what often happens in our body is that these supportive muscles, one becomes stronger than the other becomes weak. One of the muscles is overworking basically while the other one is weak. And this is very common for people to have in their abdominals and in the legs, the pelvic area. So doing exercises that balance all these supportive muscle groups around the pelvis, the legs, the abdominals can really help to balance these tension patterns out. And another common cause of pelvic floor tension, which goes in relation with this, is having an anterior pelvic tilt. Basically, your hips are tilted forwards, creating a strong sticking out of the butt. So the spine becomes overly curved. This tends to cause you to have more of a stress response in the nervous system because your system's out of alignment, and this often results in premature ejaculation and sexual dysfunction. So you can look up some exercises to correct anterior pelvic tilt if you think you have this, or work with a good physical therapist, body worker to help you correct this issue as well. And what really goes in coordination with what I've been talking about here, strong patterns of tension in the pelvic floor or imbalances in the muscles, is spending too much time sitting down. Sitting is really the new smoking for our modern world. As I say this sitting down making this video, but spending extended periods of time sitting down throughout the day creates a lot of tension in the pelvic area, in the legs, the psoas muscle, the abdominals, and I think it's one of the most common causes of modern pelvic dysfunction in men is spending too much time sitting down. Certain postural muscles become weak and it results in imbalances and tension patterns in the pelvic floor. So really try to spend more time moving around, getting up. If you work at a desk, consider getting a stand-up desk and moving your body. At least take a break every hour to move your hips around, move around, and get some exercise. Another very common cause of pelvic floor tension is doing Kegel exercises. Now, I don't have the viewpoint that like no one should ever do Kegels ever, but it's very unfortunate, and I think it really highlights the lack of understanding about the male pelvis, really the whole male sexual system, where if you look up exercises for premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction, usually the number one thing you will find is a recommendation to do Kegel exercises, where you're tightening, squeezing the pelvic floor. And to me, this is just ridiculously stupid advice, because if you already have these tension patterns down there, squeezing and squeezing these muscles is only going to make it worse. And that's what it usually does for men. It usually just makes the issue worse. So if you have pelvic floor tension, I highly recommend that you do not do Kegel exercises, as it will often just make the issue worse. Now, another common cause of pelvic floor tension is poor habits during masturbation and sex. And really going back to what I was just talking about, tensing the pelvic floor muscles, a lot of men are squeezing their pelvic floor during sex or masturbation. This is often a habit we learned in our teenage years when we were first discovering sexual pleasure, because we were scared mom was gonna walk in on us. So we're like, we gotta get this done as quickly as possible. So let's squeeze the living hell out of the pelvic floor so I'd hit that ejaculation very quickly. I started realizing I was doing this and that I had been doing it for probably most of my life. Of course, if you're masturbating regularly, which I'm not saying is a problem, but if you're doing it in this way where you're squeezing your pelvic floor muscles, you are very likely going to create hypertension patterns in your body, basically having a stress response to sexual stimulation, which will further ingrain premature ejaculation in your system. Unfortunately, it can be undone. So you want to really work on relaxing your pelvic floor during sexual stimulation, breathing deeply into your pelvic floor, releasing tension, not squeezing, death gripping your pelvic floor muscles during sexual stimulation. And that's a whole process. I talk about this in many other videos, like in overcoming premature ejaculation, which one of the main things is we're letting go of this involuntary contraction response during sex. The next cause of pelvic floor tension is improper breathing. And this really goes on everything else we've been talking about, because there's a relationship between the diaphragm, the abdominals, and all these surrounding muscle groups, the pelvic diaphragm as well. When you're not breathing properly, most people don't breathe properly because they're stressed out. When you're not breathing properly, you're not engaging the diaphragm properly. You're not getting this full abdominal breathing, which we're naturally should be doing. And this causes an inability for the diaphragm to properly engage and release. And often what happens is the pelvis area has difficulty contracting and releasing properly, and you get stuck in tension. So doing some breathing exercises every day, fully engaging the diaphragm, will really help to release these tension patterns from your diaphragm and free up the pelvic floor as well. The next cause of pelvic floor tension is stress. I mean, this is probably one of the main causes in our modern world. And this really connects with everything else I've been talking about, because stress in the mind creates stress and tension in the body. A tense mind equals a tense body. Our mind and body are very connected. And a common area that men hold tension and stress in is the pelvic floor. And when you're spending all day sitting down, it just compounds all of this. You don't get a proper release in the pelvic floor. You're not moving your body. So stress is something to address, which of course affects your breathing, affects muscular tension. And so you really want to work on ways of managing stress, practicing meditation, breathing exercises, spending time out in nature, just removing stress factors from your life as much as possible. Physical exercise, all these things will really help you to be a little more relaxed, chill out, and let your pelvic floor hang looser, but not too loose. And then the final cause of pelvic floor tension can be gut issues, inflammation, digestive issues. I'm kind of putting all these things together. A lot of people have inflammation in their body from, again, stress. Stress often compounds your inability to properly digest things. And when you're eating questionable foods, fast food, processed foods, seed oils, and things like that, then your system becomes further taxed, further stressed by this. And what often happens is gut issues, digestive issues, causing inflammation in the body, creating stress and tension in your pelvic area. Constipation as well. If you don't have regular healthy bowel movements, you have a lot of constipation, this creates a stagnance, creates a constriction and a tension, which spreads into the pelvic floor as well. Check out my video on the sexual vitality diet, because I talk about, basically the main foods that mess people's systems up and will minimize inflammation. But you want to really get your nutrition, your diet, your lifestyle really on point, because if you're experiencing, dysfunction, if you're experiencing issues in the body, if you're experiencing pelvic floor tension, inflammation, you really want to get to the root of that issue. I want to finish just with sharing a few things that will be helpful. I've kind of dropped some pointers throughout, some things that will help this, but basically, if you're working to overcome pelvic floor tension, I would recommend working with exercises that help to stretch, open up, and release tension from the pelvic floor area. Check out my 12-minute routine that you can use every day to release pelvic floor tension. I would recommend practicing relaxing your mind and body throughout the day, progressive relaxation exercises, breathing, meditation practice, releasing stress from your mind and body, changing how you have sex and how you masturbate. Definitely get my free ejaculation control course to learn healthier habits so you can engage in self-pleasure or sex in a way that benefits you rather than creates tension patterns in your body. I hope you enjoyed this video. Wishing you the best on your journey of being more embodied, more balanced, and really in your power. If you liked the video, please subscribe to my channel and have a great day.